All right. On this week's episode of the Mental Edge Podcast, your hosts,
Fernando Lopez Jr.
and Jay Casey, get to talking with Brad about when he was real bad.
I tell you what, man, did you watch any of Brad's? Anything about Brad? Like I found a couple things on YouTube.
With Brad?
Yeah, because he has done these before.
Well, better than that,
And
I heard Brad live.
Yeah, and you heard him live, you've
At
experienced
Jubilee, I've had the experience.
the beauty of Brad.
Just remember that's
It's
Carrie.
I probably won't even say him because I don't want him
that?
to steal my thunder. Right?
Who's Carrie?
Mental Edge Thunder.
The guy that does In Your Corner.
In your corner.
Is that still an active thing in your corner?
Yep.
Is
He's
it
actually on a mission trip in the Dominican right
How
now.
awesome
nice?
is that?
I love the Dominican.
Never been to the
And
Dominican.
I had the the family, they do stuff.
Yeah,
over
yeah.
at Jubilee.
I love those guys,
I had
yeah.
them go down and they taped their testimony on this show also.
I thought it was very well produced. It was very like the production, like the background was nice, and so if anyone wants to look it up, it's Carrie Farr
Yeah.
in your corner, right? And it's something you could type in Brad Kellett. It's if you go to YouTube and you type in your name, which takes 2 T's. I figured that out pretty quickly. You'll see Brad. You'll be like, wow, there's a really handsome guy. That's Brad. Click that
Let's
one.
not be lying to people now.
Well, they're going to know.
My name is Brad. I'm looking fly. When they ask me how I do it, I just point to the sky. My name is Brad.
No,
They're
the
gonna
people
see it.
must know. And I want to sit before we even get started. Before we say, usually, Brad, we do say who we are, and then he says the Mental Edge Podcast, and it's really cool. People clap and everything, but
All the people
wanna
in the
say,
studio
like-
clap.
like there's so much testosterone in this room
Is that
right
when
now.
Stella
dude.
comes busting
Yeah,
in?
yeah, that's what she. Yeah, she
That
can't
dog
help
come
herself.
in, yeah,
it's
but
crazy.
It's like if this was a pizza, it'd be extra testosterone. Right now. There's so much men up in this room, like manly men. Thanks for calling Mental Edge Pizza. Can I take your order?
Well, honey, I sure hope so. I heard about this extra special pizza y'all have for a limited time. It's got some J on it, a little Fernando, and some Brad sauce. I think you call it the extra hunky special. Do y'all deliver?
Absolutely not. The flannel and the jacket.
Yeah, I love that.
Nice up. So anyway,
He wore his. By the way, Jay wore his flex shirt today. Like
yeah.
literally,
Hey, I just left the gym, bro. I gotta make it count.
he doesn't. Yeah, you came back from vacation. Jay is like, look at him.
Come back from the gym.
I'm not the goddamn lumberjack and a guy that should be in commercials. Show me up in our video.
This guy's crazy.
No. So anyway, my name is Jay Casey,
I'm Fernando Lopez Jr.
And I'm Brad Kellett.
and this is
The Mental Edge Podcast.
All right, and we have an exciting show today. We have a guest, Brad Kellett, whose testimony, the very first time, Brad, I listened to you give your testimony at church, I was mesmerized.
Yeah.
Because
Cool
what
stuff.
happens is when people are in leadership roles, sometimes in church, it could be a work,
Man.
and you don't know their story, they're moderately interesting, but when you hear them tell their story and it's as polished as yours is, it really is so poignant to people. Like it gets people thinking. Like, here's what happens. Like when you start saying, like, you're gonna tell your story and it's so smooth when you tell it, but like people will be doing this, and then you'll say something like, and then I stabbed a man, and people go,
Oh my goodness.
See,
Oh my
he
goodness.
says polished. I say
Yeah.
it started in the mud.
see what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, he knows. So there's so many great details about your story, and I know Junior's got a bunch of questions, and I got some questions, and yeah, we want to talk about some hard stuff too, but at the same time, we don't want to take any glory away from the victory, because it is all about the victory. Okay, so anytime you get a chance to tell your testimony, Brad, how is it that you go about starting it? Because the power in your testimony, in my opinion, is in your ability to relate to who you're normally speaking to.
Right.
You know?
Well, I mean, like to start it, man, it's really, I got to put me aside for it. You know?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
And I can only start at the beginning of where I was, you know, and you know, I mean, at a young age, just filled with anger, you know, anger, resentment, just because my dad wasn't around, my mom was working multiple jobs. My sister would try and step up and like, you're not my mom, you're not my parents, and you know, starting at 11 was the first time I ever used anything.
11 years old.
Wow.
Like,
11 years
okay,
old.
so to put that into perspective, 8 feet from me right now is my 12-year-old son.
Yep.
So that blows my mind. And I know
Yeah.
you've got a 7-year-old son and you've got some kids, and we'll talk about that too. So 11 years old, and most of the people listening, Junior and Brad, most of them have kids, most of the guys, most of the ladies. Right now, they pictured their own kid when you said that.
I certainly did. And I'm like,
There's
holy
no way they
cow.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
What,
crazy.
what was the drug, if you don't mind me asking?
So I mean, the first thing was cigarettes and weed.
Okay.
You know, alcohol.
Yeah.
Friend's older sister. You know, her and her
Yeah.
boyfriend partied, and
Mom or dad, somebody threw a
Mom-
cigarette butt and you went and
mom-
grabbed it when they
mom
weren't looking and
smoked,
started
you know,
smoking.
and it started
Oh,
with
man.
that, and then you know, hey, let's try this, and
Do you believe? I mean, Brad, people are gonna, they argue whether or not marijuana is a gateway drug. But do you? I mean, you do believe it can start as early as cigarettes, kind of
Yeah,
like it's
I mean-
the introduction of compromise, right?
I mean, personally, yeah, I absolutely believe it's a gateway drug. You know, because it gets to a point you use that like, oh, it's not so bad. You know, it's a little buzz, little this, and then eventually over time, it's like I need a little bit more. Yeah, at least that's how it was for me.
Yeah.
I needed a little bit more, and then I started drinking some more.
Yeah.
You know, and then okay, well that wasn't enough. Let's try some acid. Let's try some mushrooms. I mean, I've been through the ringer with the drugs. You
That's
name
incredible,
it. You know,
Brad.
I've done probably
Because you
majority of
don't,
the
you don't,
drugs.
you're not wearing it, and that's
Yeah.
we'll get into that. That's the power of Jesus.
not anymore.
That's right. I just mean when somebody tells that story, typically they look like they've done that, and I know that's part of your story too, is how far you've been out of that.
Right.
That's why we feel safe having you here, Brad. We feel like you can tell your story and people can believe it because you've been delivered for quite. I'm sure you work on yourself every day, but for quite a long time.
Well, I'm definitely not perfect. You
Yeah,
know?
amen.
No,
And
Amen.
it's
that
nice
was-
because my wife reminds me of that pretty much daily. You know? So it just makes me
your
work
wife.
a little more. You
I
know?
love your family and your wife.
It sounds like you guys have a great relationship. You guys are friends, as you know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool, you know. I remember listening to, just like Jay. I remember listening to you and your wife.
Right.
I got the double. Did you hear them both talk at the same time? That's how I got introduced to Brad. And I remember, I think I initially just said hi to you before you went up, and then you talked about it, and I'm like, dang, man, this is crazy. I would have never in a million years thought that,
Yeah,
that
I think
story.
Our introduction was, hey, this is Junior.
Yeah.
He handles all the media stuff
yeah.
here. If you got any pictures or anything, give it to
give
him.
it to him. that was basically
was-
it.
yeah.
So then from that, hearing your story, it was really, really powerful. And I came from my parents. My mom wasn't into drugs, but my dad was, and he did for 40 plus years. He did drugs, and he's been clean for like around 6 or 7 years now.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And so it's like my relationship with him, we've come back together.
Right.
And yeah, like I had a point in time when I was like in my late teens and 20s where I really just did not like him.
Yeah.
And then
I went through the same thing, man.
Yeah. Did you? Yeah. So we came back together, and like just hearing my dad's testimony and knowing what I went through and hearing your testimony, it really touched me. So I'm glad. And going to what what Jay said, before we had you on, one of the one of the main things that was said was, he's been at it a while. So I think this is a good, you know what I'm saying? Not because I just feel like you've been through it, right? There's been years that passed by. You've
proven.
kind of, you've
Amen.
proven. And we were like, man, this is going to be a good story. So we're happy to have you
Well,
here.
it wasn't
man.
always easy. I mean,
No. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah.
Well, when I first came home from prison,
Wait, let's rewind.
so
How'd
it
you
gets
go?
better,
Wait.
right?
Let's rewind a little more.
now.
A little more, just a little more. Rewind a little more.
All right. Well, I mean, as I was saying, 11 years old, the first time
sure.
I ever used anything.
Yeah.
You know, by junior high, you know, you're
Yeah.
what, 13, 14, 15. I'm
Yeah.
dropping acid, doing cocaine.
Doing cocaine.
Wow.
In junior high.
And in high school, it was, man, I'd walk into school smoking a blunt, go to my locker, get my stuff, check into class, and leave.
Wow.
Yeah. Man, Brad.
I mean, really, I was going to high school was to get drugs, sell drugs, and use drugs. That's what it was.
Your customer
about.
base.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, there was so much just anger and resentment wrapped up in me.
Yeah.
That's how it was masked. That's how I was able to just go on and.
Did you feel powerful, Brad? Like you like almost like I'm taking control and like now I'm kind of the man, and because you're a big guy too, Brad. There's a lot about you dynamically.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, there wasn't like one set of clique or group. You know what I mean? Jocks or you know whatever
Sure.
it is. Like I mingled with everybody. And
Yeah, you
basically
have
because
that's your superpower, I think.
Yeah.
You
you
relate,
know,
Brad.
But I mean, it did kind of bring that thought in mind. Like, yeah, you know, I'm the man. I got this. People call me.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of like taking over that feeling of needing to be wanted.
Hit the record button.
Needing to be wanted.
That's an incredible thing. I feel like that is. I read this one time, Brad. Like one of the most basic human desires is to be desired.
Right. And, you know, my dad was an alcoholic, so it was a lot of broken promises. Like, you know, my parents divorced when I was probably like 4 or 5.
Okay.
So he's not in the home.
Right. So
Okay.
it was a lot of, and he's in halfway houses
Yeah.
and doing this, and I'll come get you, and then not show up.
Broken
Yeah.
promises, like you said.
You know, okay, I'll be there in an hour, then not show up, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
get it.
So like that need to feel wanted or loved or important to somebody.
Yeah.
I think kind of got overcasted by that selling drugs and. You know what I mean?
You kind of get a little
Knowing
bit of that
everybody.
though, even through that.
Well, yeah,
definitely.
Because then
Wow.
you feel like, all right, people like me,
Yep.
like me, but all along what they like is the only thing I'm selling them.
Yep.
You know?
Wow.
So it still wasn't even on a personal level.
But it's superficial, and sometimes, man, when that's all you're getting, you embrace it. Like,
Yeah.
right, you know, when it's not getting real love, you'll embrace superficial love.
But even in those moments, I'm still so alone and isolated.
you still
because,
know, yeah,
You know?
that's incredible.
So, and that's where, like, with my addiction with the drugs and that, man, that, like, killed that emotion. There's a long time. And even now and then, Laura still's like, man, sometimes you're like a robot, like, with your emotions. I'm like... Look at all the years that I killed those emotions compared to how I've been trying to bring them back up.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, I got saved in 2009.
Wow.
You know, so I mean, from 11 to 26, man, that still has some years on where I'm at now. But
Man, Brad.
so it's still a daily thing of coping with emotions and communication, because the communication in that all was, you got my money or don't you? You know what I mean? Even in my relationship with my wife, my communication isn't as good as it should be.
Sure.
You know, but it's not what it used to be, so there's progress in it. So 17, the first time I tried heroin.
Holy
my God.
smokes.
And it was through a friend. You know, a good
friend.
But
Yeah.
it was another thing.
I mean, but all you know about friendship is like, right? I mean, it is what at that moment when you said that you believed he was your good friend.
It was a guy I hung out with, constantly worked with, you know, and it was another situation. An older sibling was on heroin for a long time.
Yeah.
And we're at his house and we're doing lines of coke, and he's like, "Here's a line." And I tried it. I'm like, "Man, that burns a little different."
Yeah.
It's
You know,
it's
and then I was
different,
like, "Whoa," you know.
Yeah.
And I had to go to work. And I went to work, and I called him like, "Dude, what was that?" He's like, "Oh, that was heroin." So I didn't even know
gosh.
till after the fact
Wow.
of what it was. But I mean, that first line that I did of it was so intense and had such a euphoric feeling on me. I was like, man, I want to do another one.
So much different than cocaine, which is more of a stimulant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I get.
Yeah,
There
one's
was-
an up or one's a downer.
Yeah.
You know. So, and the next day all right, man, let me get another line. And then it was like 3 or 4 days, and then I didn't do it. and I was starting to get like sick, like flu-like symptoms.
Literal withdrawal.
And I didn't know much about it at the time. And he's like, "Oh man, you're getting dope sick." He's like, "You need to. The only way to get rid of that is to use." And for 2 years I was snorting heroin, and I was working, but it was never enough.
So you're
money.
functional.
Yeah, I was functioning. I mean, I'd take
My dad. I'm not trying to interrupt, but my dad, he was functioning for. I guess
bizarre,
that particular drug you can function for like 20 years, like long time.
Yeah. As long as you don't run out of it, because you will get sick.
Man.
So like I was working, but then it'd be my lunchtime. It's a half hour.
Yeah.
Well, I got to run from Schaumburg to Chicago to go get dope. So guess what? I'm not back at work for 2 hours.
This is a way of life for you.
Yeah. And it got to a point where everything consisted of being able to wake up and get high so I wasn't sick.
Yeah.
And then once I wasn't sick, then it was going out stealing so I could actually get high. Wow. And that's what the cycle became. Wake up, not get sick, go out, steal, go get high. Wow. You know what I mean? And that was an everyday thing, man. Just is terrible.
It's so crazy to me that like the initial time that someone engages in this behavior, it's to feel good. But this is what the devil does on the back end. When you don't have it, he makes you feel sick.
Yep.
Yeah.
So right now you're just trying to get normal. Oh
That's
my God,
it.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I would have, and that's it, man. I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Well, after 2 years, I had another. He was a really, really good friend of mine. We were really, really close, and we got high together. We went to school together. Like we knew each other a long time. And when he used, he injected, so he shot it.
Sure.
Wow.
And he'd always be like, "Hey, why don't you try this?" And I'm like, "Nah, dude, I'm good, So after probably about a year hearing this from him, we were at the house, we were drinking, partying. He's like, "Hey, let me shoot you up." And I was like, so drunk. I'm like, "Look, if I let you do it, will you just leave me alone about it?"
Wow.
And he's like, "Yeah." And after that point, I never snorted it again. I only injected it. Wow. Because it was such more of a powerful, feeling and euphoric feeling at that time. I mean, and I can't even explain the feeling of it, and I don't want to explain it.
I get it.
You're not glorifying it, Brad.
You know what I mean?
But people need to understand the connection to the addiction is almost unexplainable.
Yeah, and then you just start chasing that. And I couldn't get out of bed without shooting 3 or 4 bags of heroin. Like I could not get out of bed without.
It just sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
It sounds unsustainable and deadly.
Yeah, and deadly. Another part of that though that I couldn't help but think of is when you were sitting there and he asked for you to do that. Hey, I'm not trying to offend you for real. I really just it touched me because I'm thinking to myself, man, I've been at the point where I felt really bad about myself,
right?
Where I'm allowing other people to hurt me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I kind of was like sitting on the couch next to you when you were telling the story. I apologize. I'm so in this right here. I'm just like next to him like, wow, I've been there before where, I feel less of myself. I don't really feel good about myself, and I'm allowing someone else to actually injure and hurt me.
It's hurting you more.
Yeah.
But I mean, at that time, the debate was, well, as long as I've known he's been doing it, he's been shooting and he's fine.
He's alive.
So okay, if I do it one time, he can stop asking me.
Yeah.
And I just keep going on.
Yeah.
But,
Do you think when a person like that asks you, and you believe in your heart, he's your friend, he understands the depth of what he's asking you to do, and it's weird because you would think he cares about you, Brad, and in some weird sick way he does. Like he's actually wanting, hey, this is way more amazing, but he also knows the detrimental effect of it. So it's this crazy dynamic. Like retrospectively, you still consider him your friend.
I think also a third perspective to look at that is, like you said, he loves you. He wants you to have a better experience. But then there's that area of like what we in the church world call like the sin aspect of it, right? Where there's a demented, like there's something demented to this way of thinking.
Right.
You know what I'm
see,
saying?
that's the thing with that
Amen.
addiction is, it's like, man, I love you. We could be best friends.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it's like, okay, if he does this, then however he gets his money, he's going to do whatever he has to do. So now I could ride along with that too.
Dang.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's another level.
Because
The honor amongst thieves level.
because you do get more sick off of shooting it than snorting it because you're putting it, mainlining it right into a vein.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So the sickness is worse. And, I don't think that's like a forethought in the mind.
No, yeah. I
But
get
that
it.
all comes along with like that demented
Yeah.
thinking, twisting, demonic crap
Yeah.
that you deal with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
So at that point, at some point, you meet Laura.
yeah.
Who you mentioned was a little bit older than you. Now, she's a few years older than you. So, I mean, when you explained it downstairs, it was almost like she took the pacifier out your mouth. When you were a kid.
Now you're going to get me in trouble, right?
No. I love you guys. Are beautiful.
Yeah.
Your wife is beautiful. Your family's beautiful.
Here's some candy.
My wife Missy is older than me too. So yes, she did, and the way she chased me. But, so I remember you telling a story, about how it affected your wife. Like eventually, somehow,
you already
your
met her
girlfriend,
during
she
this? You already know
married.
her?
No, so I didn't meet her till I was 24.
Okay.
So
So you're already in this game.
I'm
You're in this
already in it
process.
deep.
Yeah.
I mean,
All right.
I get up, I boost, I go to a pawn shop, go to the dope spot, and start it all over again.
Yeah.
And so actually, I met her at a bar that I hated going to because every time I went there, I'd get in fights. But my buddy's like, "Come on, let's go." I'm like, "All right, fine." And here's the funny thing, right? Like we walked in and I see her. And I told him, I'm like, I'm going to get her number tonight. He goes, no, you're not. She's out of your league.
She's on ChristianCougars.com.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So it is so dumb how I got to talk to her because she was walking by. I go, hey, excuse me. She goes, yeah. I go, you a waitress? She goes, no. I'm like, okay, well, you want to go get a couple shots anyway?
Right.
Completely lame,
Connect.
right? Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, I met
That's
her
your game,
there.
Brad?
Yeah. Weak, right?
It worked.
So I met her and like she had no idea,
In that moment,
that I
sure.
was using. Like I told her I used to use, I don't anymore. But little did she know I was still shooting dope, and it wasn't long until my demon became her demon.
Oh man, yeah.
Wow. And then from there, man, it was off to the races.
Sure.
She was shooting just as much dope as I was. I mean, as much as I love her and in that type of life, I tried to protect her as much as I could where she wouldn't have to go out and steal or do anything. Like I'll take care of it. Just sit back.
Sit back. Yeah. You were stealing for one, Brad.
Yeah.
And now you're stealing
I'm
for
stealing
two.
for two. So now that just doubled the money I had to make every day.
Every day. And you quoted that number before.
Yeah, I was at the end of it, I was shooting a minimum of $200 a day. So that was at least 26 bags I was shooting a day.
A day.
And she was doing the same.
And she's doing about the same. And so you guys basically as a team have a $400 a day habit.
Minimum.
Now listen.
Wow.
Just do the math, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm doing
Like
it right
a
now.
really good professional living. Like, we all have Dusty. He's a
Weekly.
entrepreneur. $2,800 a week. A week?
That's not even
52
living.
weeks.
That's not even living expenses.
That's before you eat Taco Bell, like whatever, right?
I mean, dude, my diet on that was a McDouble and a chocolate shake every day.
yeah.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
all I ate. And living
Well,
expenses.
you're like a tall guy. How did you? Were you thinned out or?
Yeah, I was. So when I went to jail the last time, I was like 217 pounds.
I want to hear about the jail part. Yeah. What happened there? With the wife in the jail and all that. Like, did
So-
that happen while you were married? Before you were married?
Yeah, we got married in 2008.
Okay.
We were still in it, using in that. And from 17 to 26, I was arrested 13 times. Which, I mean, you do the math on that, that's an arrest for every other year of my life up to that point.
How do you get in and get out 13 times?
I mean, it was, a month here,
Yeah.
6 months here, 3 months there, I bond, cash bond.
Is it mostly theft charges,
Yeah.
Brad? So you're not getting caught with massive amounts of drugs or
No,
So
I mean
okay.
it was the thefts, which
Yeah.
okay, you go in, get bonded out, you go to court
Sure.
this day. Small possession charges.
Okay.
Nothing, no
Yeah.
large amounts.
That's why you were able to get back out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was.
He's so chill.
I know.
I'm like, the energy is awesome. I'm like, people, they're only listening and, for whoever watches but like sitting in this room, I already, like, not because I know, it's just because I'm sitting next to him and I feel that energy that I can't wait to where this, like the story is about to head. It's just
I know.
like, yeah,
It's good.
it's awesome, man. Yeah, this is great.
Brad, you have a superpower, and it's that there's no sense of urgency when you tell your story.
Yeah.
And that's why I think when people like, it doesn't ever feel like it's about you all the way.
No,
It's like
no.
you're like, this story is, and that's what we love, and we don't want to stop you.
No.
We want you to keep going, but we love that people realize their story's not always about them.
It
Like,
just has me in it. That's
it has
all.
you in it,
just
but
had-
we've watched
I love
it
when you said
in
that.
our church. We've watched people get bussed to our church because of your story.
You're going too far.
Right.
Let him
They
finish.
get bust.
Let him get
I know.
there. Let him
Let's
get
go.
there. All right, so 13
Thunder.
times.
Yeah, so 13 times. The last arrest, it was in March.
Yeah.
It was St. Patrick's Day of 2009.
Wow.
And I was dope sick, didn't have a car at the time, and I got my buddy, Ryan, who was a using buddy. He's like, I'll take you to go boost, go steal. So we go to the store in, I think it was Algonquin, Arlington Heights in Illinois. And I go in, I go steal a couple bottles of liquor. I think I had like 3 bottles of Moet champagne. They're like $30 bottles of champagne. I get $15 a bottle at a liquor store I was selling them to. And I go in, and like, yeah.
This is an industry. You steal from a liquor store and sell to a liquor store.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah.
See you next week, Brad.
Yeah. And so I go in, and like, I notice the guy watching me. So I'm like, all right, it's a security guard. And this is how sick my thinking is at the time, right? It's a misdemeanor. Like, okay, take it back.
You are a
No
critical thinker.
trespassing.
You get it, yeah.
And so I go outside, and I see him coming outside, and I'm thinking this, like, I'll just go back in with him. He can write me no trespass. Even if he calls the cops, they'll give me an I bond. It's a small misdemeanor.
He knows the
You know?
the
Yeah.
system. You know the way it goes, man.
So, and he's like, no, that's not happening. And he went to grab me, and he punched me in the back of the head. So I start fighting with the security guard, who's about my size. And
2 bears out there.
Yeah, I
pretty
know.
much.
This has to be crazy, man. Yeah.
And it was either 2 or 3 other security guards came running out, and I had a 6-inch folding buck knife in my pocket that I pulled out.
Holy smokes.
And while me and him are wrestling, I ended up stabbing him in the chest twice.
Oh,
And
Man.
it ended up collapsing his lung. He was in ICU for a few days. So after that happened, I run. And I'm
gonna
running.
move over a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little.
I'm good. I don't have that on me. Well, there's a pencil, so.
Yeah. I'm good.
Yeah, let me get that.
Get this thing over. I'm just messing with you, man.
You're
Go ahead.
good. And so I run back to Ryan's van, and I jump in the van. I stashed the knife. Like, it was a big conversion van, so in the back it had all these little cabinets. I'm like stashing it under stuff in that top cabinet. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And next thing I know, he jumps out of the van. He's outside the van, like, what are you doing? I don't know you. Get out of my
like
van.
Tekashi 6ix9ine. He's
Yeah.
like, I don't know who you are, man.
So at this time, man, I'm just surrounded by cops. And they're like, come out of the van, guns
man,
drawn.
Brad.
And so I'm like, there's nothing I could do. I got out of the van, and they got the bottles laying on the ground. And they're like, what'd you use to stab him? I'm like, I didn't stab nobody.
Right, of course.
I didn't do anything. And they arrested me and took me back to the police station. And they wouldn't let them take the van. They searched the van. They found the knife.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're charging you with attempted first-degree murder, aggravated battery, great bodily harm, and 2 counts of theft.
Brad, I've heard you quote this, you're dang near an attorney.
I
And it's like when you quote it, but you almost become one by default because you're in the system so much.
Yeah.
You know the way charges sound in front of a judge.
Being in, with public defenders, and then you got your jailhouse lawyers. All you do is hear them talk to people in jail all day. And but you think I'm a lawyer, man. I ain't nothing compared to Laura.
Sure. Yeah.
Laura's the one. I'm like, I'd literally tell her, you should have been a lawyer.
You should have been,
You know?
And there's still time.
So, so I have no bond. I get booked into Cook County Jail, and the Class X is 6 to 30 years.
Wow.
For the attempted murder, and at this time, Laura got arrested in DuPage County in Illinois on a warrant from Lake County, Indiana.
Wow.
And she got sentenced to the Kimbrough work release when it first opened for the women. And so I'm sitting in Cook County, and she's in there going through the program. And this is crazy how God works, because Paul and Adele Adele was going there doing Bible studies at the time for the women. And
People from your church?
yeah. And the one day, I guess Adele's like, is anybody in here not sure if they've been saved? And Laura's like, I don't know. And she grabs her. She's like, you're getting saved today. And she started praying for her,
Wow.
and
Rope her in, man.
Yeah. And she ended up getting released from there. And God did a huge thing with them, because they only knew her from being in the work release. And I was in prison. She had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
The church that we were at the time put her in a hotel for a couple weeks, and like, okay, well, now you got to figure something out.
Yeah.
And she'll tell you, she's like, I heard God say you need to bring her in the home and raise her up in the Lord.
Man.
So she brought it to Paul. They prayed about it, and that's exactly what they did. So now I'm still sitting in Division 1, and she starts writing me letters talking about.
And they're different. They're different, right? He knows off the bat. This is a different kind of letter.
I found that thing that fills that void that we've been trying to fill with these drugs for so long.
This is what she's saying to you?
This is what she's writing me.
Wow.
And she's like, that thing we've been trying to fill with these drugs and partying, she's like, it's Jesus.
Man, that woman loves you, Brad.
Yeah. And you guys heard it, before my first response when I wrote her back was, really? You're going to be a Bible thumper?
Yeah, you Bible thumper.
Come on.
So what was your background as far as church is concerned, or Jesus, or anything like that? What was your background with faith or religion?
So there really wasn't one. My mom would take us on major holidays. When I was younger,
we call them EC Christians.
Yeah.
A family moved in next door. He was a pastor of a church.
Gotcha.
And so, I can look back now and see that God was chasing me from a young age. I was just blind.
How awesome is that?
That's awesome. The reason I say that is because I use like a story where I had a buddy. He was so excited when he found out about Jesus, and he didn't know really. He wasn't raised in church. And he was talking to another buddy of mine that had never been to church, didn't even know what Jesus was. Right. And he comes up to him and he's like, "Hey man," he goes, "Man, you gotta be like filled with the blood of the Lamb and and all this stuff." And so he ends up leaving, and my buddy looks at me and he's like, "Filled by the blood of the Lamb?"
He's like, "Hey man, what language is he speaking?"
He's like, "What's the blood of the Lamb?"
What kind of cult is this?
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah.
So anyway, when I gave my life to the Lord, the girl I was with at the time, she didn't know anything about like that. So when I came home excited, she was like, "What is that? What's wrong with you?" Is that so? But you already had at least a little bit,
or it
was so little that you were
being young at church. It's like I'm at church and I'm just kind of doing my own thing.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Captain Crunch.
Pastor Jim, who was the neighbor, I remember him asking me at a young age, have you ever been saved? I remember praying, the Lord's Prayer with them, or the sinner's prayer, but I never understood what it was. To me, it was, hey, somebody, that taught me how to throw a ball. He'd go out and play catch with me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, and Laura too. She really didn't have any church background in her life. She went to Catholic school for a couple of years, but it was nothing like relational or anything like that. It was just It wasn't there.
But she got hit by some superheroes.
Oh yeah.
And it was all over her.
Man,
and she's right.
he put that velvet press on, man, and it's over with, you know. He's like, I'm gonna crush you, but I'm gonna do it gently and in love.
Right.
That's really cool.
You know, so like I had
So you
no
get the
background. Yeah,
Bible
she's
thumper.
Bible thumper. Like, what are you talking about? You know, I'm like, look, I'm ready to get out. I'm going to the dope spot.
Yeah.
And then she just keeps writing me with about Jesus and about how she's not going back and how he's changed her.
Okay.
And I'm like, how did this happen so quick?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, all right, look, we don't have anything in common anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
That makes sense.
And while this is going on, the guy that was in my cell got sentenced and went to prison.
Okay.
And they moved this guy off the Christian deck into my cell. And all he did was read and pray all day. And I'm just, you know, and looking back at it now, it's like God's like, hey, what's up? Hey, I'm here. You know what I mean?
He's dropping little. You know, he's adding some.
Yeah,
some
throwing
Jesus.
that flavor in there.
Yeah. You didn't even realize that
I
was
didn't
what's happening at the
realize it.
time.
And then she just kept on writing me about Jesus and sending scripture.
So she was consistent with the letters, and you were visually seeing.
wore you out, dude.
You were visually
Yeah.
seeing consistent in the cell next to you. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like,
No, he
think
moved
about it.
into my cell.
That's what. Or in the okay.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying?
Wow,
like
man.
so,
Two fronts.
Yes. Yeah. he's in.
So I'm sitting there, and like I started talking to him, you know, and then I'm like, one day I'm just like, you know what? Like, we don't have anything in common. Like, she's completely different. So I'm going to start reading this book called the Bible.
Yeah.
So I have something to have a conversation with her about.
Okay.
And that's when God got me.
Wow.
I'm sitting in a Max.
I love the way
You know what you did?
A Max.
She's like, don't be snorting this guy. You better maintain this guy. That's what happened, bro.
But I mean, it happened in a Max division, one of the worst parts of the Cook County Jail.
Impossible.
I mean, like the guys in there are looking at life. You know, murders, rape, like the worst of the
And
worst in there.
Yeah, you were on your way. I mean, 13 times in that short amount of span, and all, like the story. And now to like, I'm seeing the change. I'm seeing like, oh, I can't wait. All right, go ahead. Sorry, I keep
So
interrupting.
and that's no, you're good.
Yeah,
It's all right.
Yeah, it's exciting for us.
Yeah.
Because we know you and we're just the story's so awesome.
So that's when, you know, I started reading, and I think that's how like Jesus started to show his characteristic to me, who he was. You know, because it didn't matter. I think he loves me just as much today as he loved me then. You know, regardless of all the flaws and all the bad I was doing and the robbing and people I was hurting, he was still there loving me.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's something that people need to understand, that you're never so far gone or so far in the depth of hell that he won't reach in there and pull you out.
Dang.
No, he's not ashamed of you. That's amazing.
You know, so with that, you know, I'm waiting to get sentenced, and it was in March I got arrested. I got sentenced in August.
Okay.
I didn't have a paid lawyer. I had a public defender. And I mean, you can never get a hold of a public defender to see what's going on with your case. You know,
That's hilarious.
and so I go to get sentenced, and the state offered me 6 years at 85%.
Wow.
So that's
The whole time.
yeah.
When I'm looking at it.
Look,
I'm sorry, it was 8.
you didn't even
it
get a
was
Black Friday
8
sale on that, man.
It was 8 years at 85%. It was 6 to 30 I was looking at. They offered me 8 at 85, which would be like 7 3/4 years I'd have to do in prison.
Wow.
Roughly. And I'm just like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. That's
There's
a
got
long time.
Yeah.
And how was your faith during that time? Were you just getting into it?
I mean, it was, so I got arrested in March. It was like April, May, she started writing the letters, and then it was August when I was getting sentenced. So, I mean, it happened quick in a matter of months.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in a bullpen that's probably not much bigger than this room, filled with guys waiting to go in front of the judge.
Dang.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, all right. I got on my knees, and I'm like, look.
In the bullpen.
I'm like, God, I can't do what they're offering me. I said, but I know I can do what you feel is best for me to get where you want me to be.
Dude, that is such a courageous prayer.
Yeah.
That's a man prayer.
It was scary.
You know what that reminds me, you know, and we don't always go over the top.
Yeah.
But today we got to.
Yeah.
Okay. That's like Jesus' prayer. Like, Lord, if there's another way, but if not,
Yeah.
if I got to serve it, I got to serve it. Dude, did you even know what you were praying then? Because
No idea.
you
No idea of
It's
like
a critical
how it
moment in your
compared.
story, Brad.
You know, and I'm just like, whatever you feel I need to sit down to get where you need me to be who I need to be, I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that. Surrender. That's surrender.
And it's still fresh. Don't really know him.
Yeah.
Have no background in relation with him or the Bible or, you know, the grace and the mercy. Like just fresh in it. Just like, okay, I can't do it. I cannot do it myself. Everything I've done has gotten me here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know? So I go in front of the judge, and that was the only offer the state made to me. They're like, we're not making you any other offer.
Wow.
Take it or go to trial.
Wow.
So I pray that, and my public defender comes back, and she's like, they're not offering you anything else. They're not taking it off the table. So you can either take the deal, go to trial, or I can go into a conference with the judge, and the judge decides what your fate's going to be. And I don't know if you guys know, so like usually you have like a law judge and a program judge. So one judge that's strictly by what the law says.
Yeah.
And one's that's like, okay, we'll send them to rehab. We'll try and
Sure.
get them help
Okay, I get it.
treatment. You know what I mean?
I never knew that. Yeah.
And the judge that I had was a law judge.
Oh, no.
He didn't believe in treatment, anything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
And they know that, right?
Yeah.
Like the public defender's like, hey, this guy, he don't got no heart.
yeah. So she's like, what do you want to do? And I don't know. I'm like, well, I'm not taking the 8 years. I'm like, so.
Right.
And if you go to trial, they got video, they got knife, they got the witness statements, like everything piled against me. Like I'm done, fried. And I tell her, I said, well, go into the conference with the judge. So she's like, okay. She goes into the conference with the judge, with the state's attorney. She comes back and pulls me out, and I swear it looked like she saw a ghost or something. Just like,
She did, the Holy Ghost.
you know, right?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And she sits me down in this room, and she's like, the judge is pulling the attempted murder charge. I go, what? Like, I was shocked.
Yeah.
She's like, he said he doesn't see intent to kill even though you stabbed him twice.
He saw it. Well,
So for the attempted murder, there would have to be the intent. And he's
Yeah.
like, I don't see the intent.
he saw a moment of desperation, maybe, and you know what? He got influenced. Let's be honest.
I didn't, and that's what I believe. I believe the Holy Spirit, man, went and touched him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he took the attempted murder off the table and offered me 5 years at 50% on an aggravated battery with bodily harm. So I'd have to serve 2.5 years. So that's over 5 years that were just taken off the table from me.
Wow.
You know, so she's like, do you want to take that? And I'm like, hallelujah.
I'll take it. Yeah.
His
Yeah.
first Christian words.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
So I get sentenced,
That's awesome, man.
and it was like a week later I get on the bus to go to Statesville to get processed. And from there they sent me to Shawnee, which is a max penitentiary.
Right.
It's a 22-hour lockdown joint. So you're in your cell 22 hours
Brad.
a day. And it's so far south, it's about 15 minutes from, why can't I think of it now? Anyway, it's southern Illinois.
Yeah.
And we had a stop at Logan Correctional Department, which is a medium security. We get off there, get some lunch, and transfer buses. I stepped off that bus, and I'm like, there's something going on in this place.
Okay.
Like, it feels different.
Wow.
And I didn't know what it was. I get on the bus, we go to another joint, switch buses, get down there. And I'm down there, and I did 1.5 years in the max joint.
Wow, Brad.
And then I get transferred to a medium prison, which is Logan.
Yeah.
The one that you were just talking about.
Right. So while I'm at Shawnee, like, okay, I'm going to church, doing
Sure.
Bible studies, you know, the hour that we're out in the morning, the hour at night. And I get my GED.
Man.
Now, is it because of what happened in the courtroom? Do you feel like that was like the kickstart that was like, man, something really happened here, and now you're like full in?
You're in tune, too,
That-
right?
yeah. Like, I think with that, when she came back with what the judge said, I was kind of like, maybe
There's something to this. Maybe he intervened. Or,
Maybe he is real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like you're growing,
Well,
right?
that was the other thing. She's like, I've never seen a judge go against a state's attorney recommendation, at least not in his courtroom.
Yeah.
You know, so I think at that point, it was kind of like, okay, maybe there is something to this.
Gotcha.
You know, and I'm doing Bible studies, and now I'm in a joint where guys are doing 30 plus years, and I only have a 2.5 year sentence. You know, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I had to get my GED. I ended up getting a job that I shouldn't have had because of how little time I had working inside maintenance, you know, weed whacking, cutting the grass, but it's extra hours out of the cell. When I come back from work, I can be in the day room for a little bit longer.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then I get transferred up to Logan, which is where I was talking about. Like something's different. And, you know, now it's been a year and a half. I've been doing Bible studies, getting in a relationship, starting to really know who Christ is. And when I got off the bus, I'm like, I know what it is. This is holy ground. When I got back there. Like, I got that same feeling, and I'm like, this is where we stopped it, and I didn't know what that feeling was. And I felt in my bones, I heard this is holy ground.
Wow.
So I got involved with going into the, church Bible studies there. And like while I was in there, me and my wife we were together.
Yeah.
But there was somebody that was poking at her ear, you know, and she's like, it's probably like 6 months before I came home. She's like, I want a divorce.
Ugh.
Dang.
And I was in a class at this time, and I told my instructor, I'm like, I gotta go back to my cell, man. I'm like, I got some things I got to deal with. And I'm walking back, and I'm like, God, why? Why me? Why would you bring me this far and then do this?
Right.
You know? And like I'm questioning and questioning and questioning. And I get back, and I start reading, and I start praying. And I pull out a notepad and a pen, and I start writing a letter to her.
Yeah.
And believe me, it wasn't me writing this letter, because none of those words on that paper were anything I had in mind.
Right.
You know, but the Spirit ministered to her. And, you know, obviously we're still together.
Yeah.
You know, so it was just the enemy trying to cause some ruckus in that. But, you know, he's like, just think of Job. He's like, I took everything. The enemy took everything.
Yeah.
But he stayed faithful.
Yeah.
And I poured back on him blessings upon blessings.
Wow.
He's like, this is nothing for me.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, like I still didn't fully understand.
Yeah.
But I'm like, at that point in time, I had a decision to either go with the enemy or to stay with God. Because I was so angry, like I could have thrown a lot of time away just going off, fighting people.
Yeah.
And, you know, that thought's there, then the thought's like I have an intimate relationship with Jesus at this point. You know, I spend time praying, fasting. I started tithing from prison off of my state pay.
Jeez.
My state pay, I'm making $15 a month on state pay work, and I'm tithing $1.50. So for me to send it cost me more than what the tithe actually is.
Like every 10th license plate is made for you, Lord.
You know, so, but it's just crazy. Because in that moment, like when that letter was being written, there was such a peace over me.
Yeah.
Like at that moment, when I was done and it was in the mail, the peace kind of went away, and I started like to get angry again.
Yeah.
But that's when I started praying again, you know, and that peace came back. So I ended up getting baptized in prison. So, and I don't know, this might be a little over the top, but you know, I believe in praying in tongues.
Yeah.
And it was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning in my cell. And I remember like seeing myself and hearing myself like saying something. And I'm like, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So it was like a week after that, one of the Bible studies, they started teaching on tongues.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, guys like, well, if anybody, you know, after the study, you want to try to receive, you know, the praying in tongues and
You're
that.
like,
He's
I already got it.
Yeah. He's like, we'll come over here and we'll pray for you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I want to go. And not knowing, like, he started praying. He put his hand on my belly, man. I just started feeling like this butterflies and things like in my belly. And he's like, just let it go. Don't hold it back. Just let it go. I'm like, I'm not holding nothing back, you know.
You talking about my lunch? What you talking about, man?
You know,
you got one eye open, you're praying, you're like, what the heck? He's
like, what am I supposed to let go?
Right,
You know, and like this starts coming out of me, and as it's coming out of me, it clicked. Like, this is what I was hearing the other night while I was sleeping. You know, so it was my prayer language that was coming out.
Yeah,
and I was kind of shocked by that, and I did studying on that. And every time I would fast, I would pray, you know, in my prayer language. And it was powerful. And I got baptized in there, and it was by this little old man. Mm-hmm. And like he reminded me of a train conductor. He's a small little guy, you know, the old like wire rim gold glasses, you know, the kind of like where he's got like the comb over.
Yeah.
And when I got in the water, and he put me under, as I was going down, I saw his face, but as I went under the water, I saw the water crash over me. And before it crashed over me, I saw Christ's face looking at me. And it was just like, and I've always looked at that like, man, did I really see that? But there's no doubt, really, there's no doubt inside, like the way the water crashed, right before it crashed, it was him. And then the water crashed over me, like he was literally washing me of everything I've ever done.
So much symbolism in the story right now is like mind-blowing. All the different, you know, like even the waves crashing, like the whole entire picture is really, like, really, really awesome, man.
You know, it was, and like when I came up, man, I couldn't help it. I was just weeping.
Yeah.
You know, got dried off, went back to service, man, and it was phenomenal.
What I love is that he just received some horrible news from home. Yeah. Right? You know, somebody's poking.
Yeah.
You get that, oh man, like I could lose this relationship. And then right now he says, I get out, I dry off, and it was awesome.
It's awesome, yeah. And there's so much going on right there.
There's so
Junior's on to something big right now because not only that, people they battle with not feeling qualified. You know, when you're in your realm of what God wants you to do, and you're like, he said it. He's like, it wasn't me writing that letter, but he put the pen to the paper and was like just being obedient.
Yeah.
And we talk about a lot about that a lot on the Mental Edge podcast. We always tell people like sometimes, you know, it's just starting, right? So it was just you picking up that pen and pen to paper and starting, and you know, and I'm sure some of your personality came out in that. Because your wife would have known it wasn't you, right?
Yeah.
She would. So there's definitely your personality in that, but I understand that you're giving like credit, to something inside of you that was just like it was overwhelming and took over and said, you know what? But the bravery was you picking up that pen and writing, because in a moment of despair you could have wrote the wrong thing.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
If it was me writing it, I don't think we'd be together right now.
Right. And that's but it was funny, you know what, you can say it was inspired too, right? But inspired by all the new changes in your life, right? Yeah. So now you're waking up and instead of doing 3 bags of heroin, right? What would your life look like then? You know, now you're picking up probably a really nice a book that's like a self-improvement book. You're picking up the Bible. You're hanging around now. Instead of hanging around the guy that says, "Hey man, let me tie you up and stick a needle in your arm," you're hanging around another guy that's saying, "Hey,
let's put a Bible study together."
Let's put a Bible study together. You know, so there's so many different changes that happened that allowed for this manifestation to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And I think a big part of it, man, is like it even says in the Bible, obedience is better than sacrifice.
Okay, exactly.
You know,
and
it's
being obedient.
It's that nudge.
Right.
Even when you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Especially as men, because of our pride.
Yeah.
I don't know if
There's
you guys
so much,
got an issue.
Preach, Brad.
Pride, like,
you know,
I don't know what it is.
Like I don't need to do that. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? But it's
a lot of times we're embarrassed.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's part of it too. Like we just don't like. When women
I'm not getting up there and getting dunked in the water in front of all these guys.
It drives me crazy. Like women seem to be so much more like cool with themselves, and and then we're supposed to be the cool guys. And
I think a lot. I think what happened to Brad too is so much self-awareness happened, where he was aware of that situation, but he was like really in tune.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you're self-aware, like you don't feel like embarrassed about certain things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it's funny. It's kind of like Jay has this analogy where he talks about being at a high school dance and being a wallflower. All the guys are too cool to go out and dance, and all the girls are dancing,
They're
right?
having a blast.
Yeah. Then
dudes is idiots.
or at weddings,
Yeah.
right? And then Jay, not too long ago, decided to get on the dance floor. And what happened, Jay?
I'm just like, man, if I'd have figured this out like in high school, I'd have had a better reputation.
But yeah,
Because I can tell my wife loves it, right? And I'm like, what have I been waiting for all my
Yeah.
life? What have I been afraid of, right?
Yeah. So you have all these things happening in your life, and also the discipline, right? There had to be an incredible amount of discipline for you to get up and take the Bible instead of, I'm sure there's other books you could have took, hung out with this crowd instead of hung out with that crowd, and it all leads, and this all was inspired by, at the end, while I'm drying off, I'm going back to my cell, and I'm like, man, this was awesome.
Yeah.
Only God could do that, right? That's
Yeah.
only.
Well, and
it's
see,
freaking
and
amazing.
that's the thing too. Like, I was never in a closer relationship with Christ than when I was locked up.
Yeah.
You have school, you have
Yeah.
a job, you still have things to do.
Yeah.
But there's really not the chaos of actual life going on.
Yeah. Or you were making good decisions.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
But there's a difference in, a lot of people, even when I was getting ready to leave, they're like, oh, you're just a jailhouse Christian, which there's a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because once they're there, they need something to lean on.
Yeah.
And when they get out, they're like, I got it.
Yeah.
Look, I'll never
Oh, that's the
have
difference
it.
right there.
So
I got
always
it versus
I always
someone
need
else
to
that-
lean
yeah.
on him because
Yeah.
I can't do it on my own.
Wow.
So
That takes strength.
it was hard, man, and it was a lot waking up, reading and praying, instead of going out and just going and playing cards with the guys.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Or just going out and working out 3 or 4 times. Like, yeah, I'd still go out, work out, I'd still go out and play cards.
Yeah.
But that was my priority, was digging into the Word, given that prayer time.
Precedence.
Getting to know Him in a deeper way. Because like with my dad not being there, I never knew that father figure.
Yeah, you didn't know how to do it.
But what he was showing me, man, was spending that time with him, what a true father is.
Right.
So
awesome.
So let's fast forward here because the clock is moving 100 miles an hour right now.
Yeah.
And every word counts. But there's a part of this story that the people who are listening and watching have to hear, Brad. And the part of the story is that you get asked with your wife to give your testimony. Like, you're from the jailhouse. This goes somewhere where people would be mind boggled. Okay, and I want you to talk.
I don't know this person.
It's
so
probably
I
only
can't wait.
like let's try to do it in the next 10 minutes, Brad. But you got to talk about how a guy goes from the jailhouse to where you are right now with your relationship with them. There's something special that happens.
yeah, so as I said, my wife was at this work release.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is what you were talking about. And she gets asked to come back there and kind of share her story with the other residents that are in this work release in Lake County.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I get out, I've been out like maybe 4 months. I'm on parole.
Okay.
I was going in, once a week and doing Bible studies with another guy. And, she's like all nervous, like, oh, I can't do it. I'm like, you know what, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
So we go in, and she goes to share her story, and she talks to the director of operations and the executive staff, and she's like, oh, this is my husband, and she kind of tells a little bit of my story to them. They're like, well, do you want to share tonight too? And I'm like, okay,
You
why
don't do
not?
this. You have not done this really. It's
Right.
just like,
Right, and it's there was a couple of officer staff like, oh, if you're going to be talking about Jesus, think of another way to go because they're not going to pay any attention to it.
Gotcha.
And we're like, well, then why are we here? Because that's our story.
Yeah.
So we both share, and I mean, you could hear a pin drop. There's probably close to 200 people in this room.
because they relate to you,
Yeah.
Brad.
And like you could hear a pin drop in this room. So we're sharing, and we get done sharing people come up, we pray for some people, and as we're getting ready to leave, the 3 top administrators are like, if you want a job, give us your resume. Now it's a full blown, it's a correctional facility.
Yeah.
They're like, if you want a job, give us your resume. I'm like, are you serious? They're like, yeah. So I'm like, all right, I got their info, sent them the resume. I'm like, hey, can you hire me now? Because at this point, I'm delivering pizzas for minimum wage.
Right.
And I'm throwing garbage for, part-time. It's was never really enough to sustain anything.
Yeah.
It was just enough for bills and that. And I call them, and they're like, yeah, come on in. I've been off of parole for a year now at this point. I go and do my interview, and they hire me. Wow. So I get hired in as a correctional officer, a year off of parole with felony convictions for violence and drugs.
That is the thing. Those are the things that surpass understanding. Like, it
I
doesn't
don't-
make
I'm listening and I don't
Jesus
even
math.
understand
It don't make any sense. But I'm here to tell you, it makes more sense than anything you've ever. When you see him in action, when you see the way that people, the way they relate, the way they like cling to Brad and Laura's story because it matters to them. It's hopeful.
Yeah.
Like it had to happen. Like the way it happened, it had to happen. I don't think you really have any regrets because you're a powerful tool, Brad. You and Laura.
If we didn't go through what we went through, it'd be completely different. You know what I mean? We wouldn't be where we're at. So I get hired in there, and then Laura's looking for a job. I'm like, hey Murphy, hire my wife.
Hey Murphy.
Yeah, you got favor now,
awesome.
man.
He's like, okay, what can she work? What does she want to work? What days? What shift? So she
Now it's custom.
yeah.
so she goes and works
Everybody
custody
likes
on the female unit. Custody wasn't for her. She's would rather do like case management. So I mean, she ended up going, leaving there. But 1 year on my anniversary date, I got promoted to a custody supervisor. So the shifts I work at night and on the weekends, I'm the highest chain of command in this correctional facility as a convicted felon.
So awesome.
And it's been amazing.
Joseph. That's his new name.
Yeah. There you go.
But it's been amazing because anytime we've wanted to do any type of outreach there,
Yeah.
I'll be like, hey, can I do this? They'll be like, you don't need to ask us, just do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no,
While you're working there, even to this day?
Even to this day.
Wow.
Even to this
I'm
day.
like, no, I need to let you know so you're in the loop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, we get
They
it.
trust
but
you, Brad.
Whatever you want to do, just tell us, what you want to do, and we'll work out a date and time for it.
Another thing I couldn't help but think is sprinkling Jesus. When you decrease, he increases.
Yeah.
So the decrease is I can't even pay my bills, but I'm gonna stay faithful. Right?
Yeah.
I can't by any other way the math doesn't make sense, but I'm gonna stay faithful. I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna still pick this book over.
Fishes in the loaves.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
You got
then he comes and he increases your life, and it doesn't make sense, but you still stay faithful. Like the discipline, the character building that happened in that cell during that 2+ years that you're waiting. It's a beautiful word picture of like our lives and how sometimes we are empty.
Right.
Yeah.
I was empty without a father, and just like your story, and then all of a sudden you learn how to be a father because you are a father. You have three children. We talked about that earlier.
It took a lot, like with Jake and Brian, like to not just be a jerk. Because I didn't know how to be a dad.
Yeah.
And it was a learning process with them, and I was probably harder on them than I should have been at that point because I'm like, well, if somebody would have been hard on me, maybe I wouldn't have gone down
Through a
that
conventional
road.
way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
So the relationship with them wasn't really that great. But now, like with Jake, him and Sam and our granddaughter, man, they come over all the time. And there's, 4th of July, he's like,
You don't look like a grandpa.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you
Keep going,
don't.
keep going.
Man, you don't.
But like 4th of July, he's like, why don't you guys come over here? He's like, I know every year and every holiday you cook and do it. He's like, I want to cook. We got fireworks. He's like,
awesome.
just enjoy it.
How old is he?
So he's 21.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's
See?
awesome.
So, it was really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool to see that. So, but like even today, on Sundays, they allow, well, with COVID, we haven't been able to, but they allow us to go pick up these girls from the jail and bring them to church.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an awesome.
Is that why you
side.
said the buses or whatever?
Like so.
Wow.
So that's on COVID's COVID.
Okay.
But we will typically see the ladies of Kimbrough on the right side of the stage if you're from the stage, or on the left side if you're looking at the stage.
Yeah.
And it's been a staple, and it's all because of your story, Brad. It's all because of your faithfulness. It's all, and not just faithfulness, but then the courage to do this. Like, it's not done. Like, this is going to be heard by 2 billion people.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. And we don't care as long as it's heard by somebody that it matters.
Well,
so.
and I think this is like an important point that I want to make is, I told a story about how like I got to know Jesus was because I didn't have didn't have anything in common with my wife at that time when I was in jail when she got saved. And there was a long time, even after I got out of prison, where I felt like shame and guilt, because I didn't come to him for me, I came to him for her.
Oh, yeah.
And and
I get what you're saying.
And
that's
I would be
deep, dude.
And I was praying, and I'm praying about this, and I'm like apologizing, like I'm sorry. He's like, you don't need to apologize to me. He's like, you didn't come to me for the right reason, but I knew how to get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's like, don't feel bad because you think this. I knew what I had to do to get you.
Yeah. Wow. How revealing.
And that was we're talking. I audibly heard him tell me, son, you didn't come to me for the wrong reason. I knew how to get you. And I just it broke me.
Yeah.
It broke me at that time, And I know you said we're almost out of time. I want to share one more thing, and I hope it's okay.
Yep.
Because I was listening to a song on the way over here, and you guys do it at church, Ain't No Grave.
Yeah.
I just want to share a couple lyrics from it.
Yes. Go ahead, man.
Because I like these verses, I was reading them, and I'm like, my God, it's my story. So, and it has to do with shame and prison, like it says, shame is a prison as cruel as a grave. Shame is a robber, and he's come to take my name. Love is my redeemer, lifting me up from the ground. Love is the power where my freedom song is found. Verse 2 says, fear is a liar with a smooth and velvet tongue. Man, I had the smoothest tongue when I was out there doing bogus stuff to get what I wanted. Yeah. It says, fear is a tyrant. He's always telling me to run. I never wanted to face what I needed to face to get right. I always just kept getting higher and higher and higher. Love is a resurrection, and love is a trumpet sound. Love is my weapon. I'm going to take my giants down. And then verse 3, it says, there was a battle, a war between death and life. And when I read this and I was hearing it on the way here, I'm like, Jesus went to battle for me. Because the enemy was literally trying to steal, kill, and destroy me. And there was a battle between the two, man.
Yeah.
It says, there on the tree, the Lamb of God was crucified. He went on down to hell. He took back every key. He rose up as a lion. He's setting all the captives free. And it just it hit me on the way over here listening to that. That's my story. I was stuck in shame and stuck in fear, and how the lying and the tyrant, that's where I was stuck in. Yeah. And it's because he was on that tree and he went down to hell and he took the keys back. That's how I got set free. Yeah. It's only because of him and seeking him and getting into a relationship with him and knowing his characteristics. Yeah. Do I regret some of the stuff I did? Of course I regret it. But I'm telling you, I wouldn't change it for anything right now with the life I have, with my kids, my wife. Yeah. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. And don't ever think anybody that you're so far down, like I said earlier, that he won't stick his hand in the deepest depths of hell or the biggest pile of garbage and pull you out and clean you up, because that's what he does.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I love it, Brad.
Mouse drop.
Mouse drop. That's what we do here. If it's ridiculous, we mouse drop it.
Yeah,
I'm afraid to touch your mic. That's been happening lately. People who talk on here have been setting our stuff on fire, and I don't have a lot. We don't make any money.
That was intense. That was awesome, man.
So listen, we're gonna sum it up right here. This has been the Mental Edge Podcast. But first, I want to say my name is Jay Casey.
I'm Fernando Lopez Jr.
And I'm Brad Kellett.
And today's episode was about when Brad was really bad.
We out.
Well, all right, that'll just about wrap it up. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Mental Edge Podcast. Your host, Fernando Lopez Jr.
Oh, he's so handsome.
And his trusty sidekick, Jay Casey.
Hey, that's me.
Seriously appreciate you spending time with us tonight. Remember, if you like this content, the most flattering thing you can do is like and share.